welcome to the B2B Growth Blueprint podcast, where we talk with entrepreneurs, founders, and leaders at B2B services, tech, and SaaS companies to learn the systems and processes they've used to create success for their business. We'll also learn from marketing and sales experts to provide insights to help you grow your business. I'm your host, Mark Osborne, and the podcast is brought to you by Modern Revenue Strategies and their 10x ROI B2B growth guarantee. Schedule a free diagnostic call to learn the fastest path to double your B2B revenues in just 90 days. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the B2B Growth Blueprint podcast. I'm your host, Mark Osborne, and today I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Brian Samson. Now, let me tell you about Brian. I'm going to read his bio to make sure I get all this right. He's a three-time founder. He's spent the last decade building service businesses that specialize in nearshoring. We're going to talk about what that is. It's really connecting Latin American talent with U.S. companies. He spent time in San Francisco and then moved to Argentina, where he built businesses from the ground up, living firsthand through the highs and lows of Latin America's unique economic environment. He's currently the host of the Nearshore Café, which is a podcast focused on doing business in Latin America that has over 65 episodes. He's also a licensed foster parent, has adopted a daughter through the foster care system, something that he speaks about regularly, and we're going to talk about a little bit today as well. He's a general partner of Hangten X Capital, which is a micro private equity firm. They have dozens of investments. We're going to talk about some of those lessons learned as he's invested in companies and grown companies. He's has an MBA from my crosstown rival over at UCLA, Anderson. And then he is also the four-time head of talent for VC-funded tech companies. So Brian, welcome to the show.
Mark, so happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, and I forgot to throw this in. You're also based in Hawaii. Is that correct? Is that where you are today?
That's correct. Yeah, that is the Hangten part of
I,
Hangten X Capital. Yeah.
I thought that might be it. So you've obviously lived a really interesting life. Spent time in the Bay, spent time down in Argentina. Now you're living in Hawaii. Why don't you kind of tell us your story? How'd you kind of get into this, and how'd you make your way through all of that?
Yeah, thanks again for the opportunity and the question. I grew up as a pretty average Midwest kid from, Midwest town, and uh I think if I were able to show 18-year-old Brian, what happened in life, it'd be a fun story and probably not something expected. But great parents, couple brothers, just like your idyllic kind of Norman Rockwell Midwest picture.
Uh-huh.
Um, but ended up moving to California, got really into the tech startup world.
Uh-huh.
So, a couple big trigger points in my career that I'll highlight. Um, Moving to San Francisco, uh, that was big for me because I felt inadequate. I felt like I just didn't belong, amongst all these Stanford and Berkeley and Caltech, MIT people, and they're all doing crazy things, and I didn't know if I belonged. Um, but it also gave me a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. Like I had to find a way to compete. I had to find a way to hang. And I think there were two things that helped me navigate that. The first was I wasn't afraid to work.
Uh-huh.
And the second was I was pretty good at finding patterns and like identifying things earlier. So after about 5 years in San Francisco, and my background was in talent. So I was the
Okay.
head of talent guy, at all these startups. And generally pretty earlier stage, so like a Series A or Series B, and I'm sure your audience understands that dynamic, but it's just it's like chronological, A is smaller than B and so on
Right.
and so forth. If you're a Series D or E, you're probably ready for IPO,
Right. Right.
for some sort of big event. So I was usually more on the earlier side. And that meant I got my hands dirty and I was also involved in the strategy. And I realized that I enjoyed that a lot. I liked having a big
Okay.
scope and
Okay.
big impact. I wasn't really the right person for the scale, when you're at like you've raised $100 million and now it's, just about building a massive team. That wasn't really me, but going 0 to 1, I could do that really well and build the playbook and set up the systems and the processes and
Uh-huh.
do the recruiting myself and, kind of advise the founders. So after about 5 years of doing that, I felt like I'd come a long way from this humble, babe out of the woods, um, Midwestern experience. And
Uh-huh.
I think I was ready to be a founder.
Okay.
Now, there's a lot of different directions I could go in here with that career path, but I didn't grow up around entrepreneurs. I didn't really know any entrepreneurs. Most people I knew were not only non-entrepreneurs, they were about as risk adverse as you could get.
Uh-huh.
My dad worked in accounting for the same company for over 30 years.
Okay.
My uncles, had long tenures with their companies. So I didn't really know entrepreneurs. And I wanted to do it, but I wanted to reduce as much risk as I could.
Okay.
So, how do you reduce risk as an entrepreneur? You raise money.
Okay.
So,
Play with other people's money.
that's right. Yep. So, I was lucky enough to find an investor, raised about $2 million. And my idea, one of the companies I had worked at was in this rapidly growing industry called fintech,
Hmm.
financial technology. Honestly, PayPal. If you ever use PayPal, that's a fintech company.
Yeah, that's right.
Probably like one of the OG fintech companies. I happened to work for Lending Club, which was a big dog back in the day. Had
Right.
a massive IPO in 2014, so I'm dating myself a little bit. Since then, it hasn't done so hot, but uh, I had this thesis as there were so many different fintech companies that had great product ideas, usually run by business guys that had no trouble raising capital, but they were kind of agnostic, maybe even apathetic about how their tech was built. So, hey, I think there's a business here. So, found this investor, did all the work, with my pitch deck and thesis and operating model and learned a lot of the stuff on the fly, which I think is a skill that I appreciated later on in life. And maybe, for any listeners that just say yes and figure it out.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of things you can figure out. You just need the confidence to do it. Um,
Uh-huh.
but anyway, our pitch was we would build the software, like the minimum viable products, the MVPs for a lot of these fintech companies, and if they got some win in the sales, we would keep going and build more features, onto the initial platform. 2 million seemed like an enormous amount of money for where I came from, but it didn't get you more than some avocado toast and a studio in San Francisco. So we needed a dev team, and the world was kind of our oyster.
Uh-huh.
I was thinking, okay, knew a lot about India, uh, heard about Eastern Europe, even was thinking about Taiwan, which is a really interesting place. A lot of engineers. You think of like chip makers,
Yeah.
um, Japanese influence, hardworking. And then I was kind of pointed in the direction of Latin America. I
Okay.
thought, let me explore this a little bit. So I ended up taking a trip down to Argentina, which is where I had a contact of a contact,
Hmm.
and kind of went in with blinders on, but went to Buenos Aires and then a town about 4 hours outside. So if you're, say, in San Francisco, think like Reading or something,
Right.
like way out there. So there's a town called Tandil, which is world famous for salami.
Okay.
You happen to like salami, it's incredible. They have salami stores, so it's a very European influenced country where, like, for me when I lived in California or even here in Hawaii, you've got Safeway, that's your
Right.
one-stop shop, or Whole Foods or Foodland. Um, Very European in Argentina. So there's the meat store, the cheese store, or
Okay. Okay.
and you kind of work your way down the block, and and I really like that. But you go to these salami stores and there's just bushels of salami kind of growing on the lane, and it's amazing. It's so good. But not to digress. Anyway, magical country. I knew almost instantly this is a place I could do it because maybe a lesson for your listeners here in volatility lies opportunity.
Okay.
And I noticed this. I like to describe Argentina as like either the most first world of the third world countries
Okay.
or the most third world of the first world. Uh,
Okay.
so,
Right on that line.
yeah, and gorgeous, beautiful Parisian style architecture. Some say it's the Paris of South America. Um, Tree-lined streets, cafes, people are sipping wine, beautiful little cafes, the best steak, and community. People are just out there leisurely having a nice meal for hours. And um, surrounded by all that was a government that totally mismanaged the economy. Inflation so bad for many
Yeah.
years that restaurant menus, even fancy ones, were not on a printed menu. They're in chalk.
Right.
You
Because the
need
price
to,
would change from day to day.
that's right. There's stories of colleagues that I had that would go to the hardware store to buy a tool. And from the time they picked it up off the shelf to the time they went to pay for it,
The
the
price
price.
change. Wow.
So we talk about how stressed we are over 10% inflation and, the
Right.
COVID years. Wow. But again, in volatility lies opportunity. So in this amazing country with fantastic quality of life, but crazy inflation, labor strikes, mismanagement, government mismanagement, you have this population that is used to this type of adversity. It's innate. They grow up with it. They navigate it all the time. Stuff that would totally stress me out, stress a lot of my colleagues out, friends in the States. It's just a regular day for them. So
Interesting.
they become really good at overcoming adversity, finding workarounds, getting creative, amazing critical thinking skills, problem solving abilities, flexible, and they can deal with chaos, right? now you tell me, Mark, if you knew about a potential talent pocket that had all those different attributes. I imagine you'd be pretty excited to look
That's
at that
right.
as for hiring.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people saw that, or a lot of people would appreciate that. And I saw that, like, wow, why is nobody talking about Latin America in 2015? You know,
Uh-huh.
2015. So I felt like I obviously it wasn't, I'm not pretending I'm Christopher Columbus or something and I discovered it, uh, but I felt like nobody was really talking about it in 2015.
Yeah.
So anyway, fast forward a couple years, grew that company to about 80 developers. Um, and then COVID hit.
Uh-huh.
Um, Ended up moving on from that business, but was just all in on Latin America. And it wasn't just Argentina. I saw opportunities in Mexico, Peru, Colombia, Bolivia, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and so on and so forth. And they all have their little nuances and arbitrage opportunities and
Uh-huh.
offs and everything. So I ended up building two more nearshore companies. One
Okay.
leased recruiters. That was called Bali Staffing. We grew that to over 55 recruiters that were supporting companies in Latin America. I'm sorry, recruiters from Latin America supporting VC-funded tech startups in the US.
Okay.
So let's say you just raised $20 million, you need to hire 50 people in the next 6 months. And rather than going through the process of hiring a whole recruiting team and then making those hires,
Right.
you could just turn the key. And you had sourcers and recruiters that knew their way around San Francisco and San Jose and all the engineering pockets and outreach and so forth. What if you had a turnkey team? So that's what we did there. And then lastly, we created Plug, which provides mostly software developers from all over
Okay.
Latin America to growing US companies. And today we're inching to 100 people.
Uh-huh.
And this is all leveraging this, what I still think is like a really special, untapped region of the world with amazing talent.
So interesting. So you talked about sort of the power of nearshoring from the perspective of being able to turnkey rather than having to, staff up a recruiting and sourcing team. And then they go out to help you staff up for this development team. You can really sort of use this sort of nearshoring solution as like a turnkey solution that just plugs in. Talk to me a little bit about how you've seen that impact, companies and serve as a growth lever. We work with a lot of folks that are trying to, break through some of those revenue roadblocks in that path from, 1 to 20 million a year. And so they're always looking for, strategies that can help them do that. Talk to us about how nearshoring can help be that growth lever.
Yeah, I think this might be a good time to start with some definitions for the
Sure.
so I'm sure most of your audience has heard of offshoring.
Yeah.
I'm sure most of your audience has heard of outsourcing.
Yeah.
So I'll talk about those two, and then we'll also talk about onshoring and nearshoring.
Okay.
So when I think about offshoring, it really means there's an ocean between, right? And offshoring almost always means lower cost. Okay. Uh, the predominant countries that the US offshores, Philippines, usually customer service, things like
Yep.
that, virtual assistants, India, China, Vietnam,
Yep.
a lot of technical jobs. So they're not working your time zone, massive cost savings.
Yep.
Um, and then you've got onshoring, which became much more popular after COVID
Right.
of let's stay in the same country, but A lot of people moved out of the cities to
Yeah.
lower
Lower
cost,
costs. Yeah.
suburban, rural, a lot of people had that dream of living in the cabin out on the lake, kind of away from
Yep.
all the chaos of the city. So onshoring, you might have a team in Kansas City and your headquarters are in San Francisco or New York. That's
Yeah.
onshoring. Not a huge cost differentiator, but the maybe everywhere is from San Francisco, New York, but generally speaking, a mild cost savings, um, but you're not sacrificing country or time zone.
Right. Very, very turnkey too. Like it's
Yeah, correct. And then you'll still have cultural nuances, right? Like
sure.
somebody from rural Texas and somebody from New York,
Sure.
you might have some things there. And then lastly, you've got nearshoring. So nearshoring, I feel like is more prevalent. People are talking about it more in 2025, especially as COVID identified the importance of time zone.
Hmm.
People were living all over the place, but if you were on the same Slack group and you could get real time,
Yeah.
you're in a sauna on Monday and you wanted to hop on a video call, time zone matters. So with nearshoring, and again, it's respective of where you are in the world. Nearshoring, let's say you're in Australia, nearshoring might be the Philippines, right?
Right.
Similar time zone,
Yeah.
but cost savings. If you're in the States, it's Latin America. So generally speaking, you're going to get 40 to 70% cost savings
Wow.
with Latin America, where offshoring, maybe it's 70 to 90%, like
Oh, wow. Yeah.
massive cost savings. Um, but why I like nearshoring, it's really that same time zone and then all the things we just talked about, overcoming adversity, flexibility, adaptability, problem solving, critical thinking. And they've got the US style English, which is something that
Interesting.
I really appreciate. If you tell somebody to take a hike, they're not grabbing their backpack and, trails.
Right.
They watch a lot of the same Netflix shows we do. They watch it in English. They're fascinated by American pop culture, movies, all this stuff. Where in my experience, and maybe this is just me, when I call United Airlines and I know I'm connected to, say, someone in the Philippines,
Yeah.
I feel like if my problem is not exactly in the script that they have, it's not going to get solved.
Not
It
as
feels like it's
adaptable.
very kind of
Yeah.
scripted. Yeah. So with Latin America, you're getting more of a conversational, um, it almost feels like I'm speaking to somebody, in the States. So this
Interesting.
massive cost savings, same time zone, understanding of US culture, problem solving ability. And broadly speaking, how all these connect are if it's a core part of your company, maybe it's staff augmentation or like an embedded part of your team. And if it's non-core, maybe you'll outsource it. So like another agency or independent contractor, might
Right.
run
Right.
that function. And they're there to kind of fill a need, but it's not like a core thing. And
Mission critical. Yeah.
yeah, very common accounting, right? Like people might outsource their accounting, and then maybe it's in Kansas City, maybe it's in the Philippines, maybe it's in Mexico, or maybe they're a tech company and they have software developers somewhere else. Maybe they've got software developers in Mexico. That's staff augmentation. So they're not necessarily outsourcing it. They just
Right.
have their talent located in a different part of the world. And then maybe I'll just bring this all together as um, the growth lever, your original question, Mark. And
Yeah.
wow, have I seen some amazing success stories of companies that, and especially during COVID, when, um, I've got a buddy who is a CTO of a Series B tech startup in
Okay.
California. And maybe May or June, so a couple months into COVID 2020, he texts me. He's like, so Brian, and he knew me as like a VP of talent guy, but also a nearshore guy. Brian, I'm paying my senior dev like 250 a year to work from home in San Jose. Um,
Right.
he's just working from home. Like, can I, do you have, is there, you know someone that can save me some money if everyone's just working from home?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course. Let's try Latin America. So we found him a full stack developer, a DevOps engineer, and all for significant cost savings. And they're working from home too. IP protection is, very similar to the US. Latin America, if you look at a continuum of risk profile with countries, the State Department will tell you, be wary of, say, China or North Korea or Russia. Um, that's not the case with Latin America. Latin America is on, the continuum almost on par with like Canada, right? Like you wouldn't
Interesting.
feel anxious about your trade secrets, in Canada. Very similar to
Interesting.
Latin America. There's all the protections, and not everyone knows about that, but all that's there. So massive cost savings, this huge growth lever. It allowed my buddy to hire more people, accelerate his product roadmap, and reach profitability a lot quicker. And there's a lot more stories like that.
I bet. I bet. Wow, that's really interesting. And you spend a lot of time talking about this on your podcast, right? And that sort of a lot of the focus there.
Yeah, our podcast, the Nearshore Café, we're I think 68 episodes now, and it's split pretty evenly between people like my buddy in the States that
Uh-huh.
um, were illuminated onto this world of Latin America, and they talk about their whole story, their whole
Uh-huh.
anecdote of doing it, like where did they start, what country they picked, mistakes they made, big wins that they had, how they figured out hiring and hardware and currency and all that stuff. And then the other half of the guests are those from Latin America. Um, and it kind of normalizes like the amazing talent there. There's VCs in Lima, fintech entrepreneurs from Brazil, um, UX designers and project managers in Mexico, and they tell their stories and what it's like working with the States. And our listeners are blown away by the English level and the high level knowledge that they have. And a lot of times they're like, honestly, I can't even tell the difference between that person and somebody, on my team in Minnesota.
Right, right. That's so interesting. That's so interesting. Well, so I want to shift gears a little bit. Given that you've seen a lot of startups in your investing with your micro PE firm, and that you've been part of multiple successful ones. For folks in our audience that are listening, and maybe they've been on this growth trajectory and they've hit sort of a roadblock, and they're thinking about what are ways to sort of break around that. What's a lesson that you would sort of impart to folks, for early stage companies as they're sort of rapid growth, and maybe things aren't clicking? Like, what's just sort of a good piece of advice that you would share from the other side?
Yeah, maybe I'll share a mistake that I made
Okay.
and how it shaped me. Um, I think, especially if you don't come from sales,
Yeah.
you kind of forget that you can't just like buy your way to sales, and that's usually the first instinct of once you get a little bit of money coming in, or maybe you raise capital. This uh, normal instinct to delegate sales, hire
Uh-huh.
outside salespeople.
Yeah.
And I did it too. I hired two salespeople really early without having figured out
We'll have
the
a
sales
process for them to
process,
follow. Yeah, yeah.
sales systems, the sales strategy. And they did okay. Um, but what I didn't realize was I needed to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but what I also underestimated was, as the founder of the company, I had a card that it was like the magic card that
Right.
got me in the room with a lot of customers. It doesn't, even if you're a founder of a two-person company, that founder card has a lot of weight. It can
Yeah.
really get you in, and clients love talking to the founder of the vendor, that they're
Yeah.
talking to. So, so I think that's the key lesson I want to impart is
Interesting. Interesting.
got to get out there. You got to take your lumps because then when you do hire someone, you've got a sales playbook, you know
That's
what
right.
works. You've got a personal story of um, the numbers you've got to hit, the approach, the way you've got to pitch it, um, what collateral works, what collateral doesn't. So when you hire someone and they work or they don't work out, you've got a much better idea, and you can also kind of call BS, right?
Right.
Like
That's right.
if their numbers and stories, don't aren't really matching. So I think that's like a huge lesson. And any peer groups I'm in, CEO groups, when people bring up like, hey, I'm getting ready to hire a salesperson.
Yeah.
Well, have you sold your own product
Right.
yet? Right? And if they had and it's wildly successful, okay,
Right.
go for it, but not before. So I think that's really key. Um, the other thing is maybe even piggybacking on this founder card of you got to be willing to get yourself out there um, and recognize that the first 10 podcasts or 10 posts or anything you do, it's gonna be ugly, and that's okay. You're working for your own retirement now.
Yeah.
Everything is compounding. I'm so much better today than I was yesterday, than I was the day before, and
Yeah.
10 years of doing this, 3,000 plus days. Wow, when I compare myself today versus, and I got a lot of room to grow, but I compare myself to, 3,000 days ago, 10 years ago, it's all compounding. So get out there, um, make the mistakes. I will say, and this is may be obvious for people, but if you understand baseball, for example, you've got to rise up in the majors, so you go to single A, you do
Yeah.
well, you get promoted to double A, you do well, triple A, and then eventually
Yeah.
the majors. So I would start in kind of lower pressure, lower consequence um, arenas. So work your pitch out with um, tiny potential prospects, master that, then go after ones that are a little bit bigger, use case
Mm.
studies and testimonials to get you to the next
Yeah.
level. Um, that will help get the kinks out, develop your confidence, build your skill set, and you take excessively more risk as you keep leveling up, but you've earned the right to do that.
Yeah.
Try not to leapfrog at all because you might not really build your skill set to be successful.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. Well, and it's funny that you talk about, folks wanting to leapfrog into not having to have to handle their own sales. And so often we see, founders that are like, all I gotta do is, hire a salesperson, tell them to be exactly like me, but they don't have that founder card.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes we even see folks that are like, well, they were a superstar over my competitor. I'm sure they'll be great here. But the reason why they excelled over there is because they were operating within a system, within a process that someone else had built. But
Yeah.
they're not skilled at building that process. They're skilled at running a process because sales fundamentally is a process. So it's so interesting that you call that out. I do want to switch gears a little bit before I let you go. I know that there's something that's sort of near and dear to your heart and your family around, sort of adoption and foster care. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with that and, what your experience has been.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Mark. I hope to just inspire a few more people to look into becoming a foster parent. For my wife and I, we knew nothing about this world until like February of 2020. So, right before COVID.
Oh, wow.
Went to church and someone spoke from one of the foster homes here in Hawaii, where there's a couple thousand foster kids. But I looked deeper into this, and there are 440,000 foster kids in the US.
Wow.
And these are kids that they're not adults. They didn't choose their circumstances. These are children, right?
Yeah.
No one chooses to grow up in a abusive uh, parents that are neglectful, not around, addicted to drugs, in and out of jail, sex trafficking, gangs, all this stuff. Wow, the statistics are it's stacked against these kids. I think it's like 2 or 3% of them will go on to college.
Wow.
Um, and I look at, where I grew up, kind of middle class, middle America. I mean, at least half of the kids, from my graduating class went on to college, and I think that's kind of common in like that demographic. Wow, 2 or 3%, go on to college. Um, Once they reach 18, they're kind of on their own. There's almost no support. So that's why you just see huge rates of all the worst things, jail, uh, sex trafficking, physical abuse, drug abuse, just and they didn't choose their circumstances. So anyway, my wife and I were lucky enough to take on a little 6-month-old girl who is the most resilient, uh, gritty girl ever. I mean, her life circumstances before we met her just unbelievable. I couldn't even fathom that kids could grow up the way that she did. And uh, 2 years into the fostering process, we ended up adopting her.
Okay.
And in about a month and a half, she'll celebrate her fifth birthday. And
Wow.
just, lights up the house, huge smile, she's into princesses and uh, My Little Pony and Trolls and loves to sing and dance. And um, but even if we didn't adopt her, just the chance to, be part of her life was really special. And the burnout is really high for foster parents. Recruitment is very low for foster parents. So I just encourage, there's 440,000 kids. They need all the good homes that they can get. So if you happen to have space in your home, um, and are looking for a way to give back, this is something that would make a huge impact on the life of a child.
Wow. It's a really inspiring story, and obviously it's something that's really, near and dear to you, and that you're passionate about. So thanks for sharing that. So I've got to be mindful of your time. I've really loved our conversation and sort of sharing from your experience. But before I let you go, for folks that are listening, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Sure. Thanks for that, Mark. Plug Technologies, that's the predominant company that is connecting talent from all over Latin America to US companies. The website for that is plugg.tech, T-E-C-H,
Yeah.
plugg.tech. And if you go to plug.tech, you'll find me, my partner Ruben, and our whole team ready to not only help you staff, but also just give you good advice on what's the right country, how to think about talent pockets, currency, scale, office space, getting hardware in and out, all the nuances of Latin America, so you could turn that into a huge arbitrage opportunity.
Yeah, sounds like it. Sounds like it. Well, Brian, thanks again for joining us today. I really enjoyed our time.
Me too. Thanks so much.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for joining this episode of the B2B Growth Blueprint podcast. We hope you've gained insights to grow your business. If you enjoyed this discussion, please rate, comment, like on your favorite platform, and share to others who will find it useful. Do you know a CEO, founder, or leader at an early stage B2B services, tech, or SaaS company who would like to be a guest and share their story? Send us a note. Let's schedule a conversation.